5 Stoic Lessons to Never Lower Yourself Again. Introduction. At some point in life, most people don't fail loudly. They fail quietly. They wake up one day and realize they've been compromising for years, not because they wanted to, but because it felt easier. Easier to stay silent than to speak up. Easier to tolerate disrespect than to stand alone. Easier to shrink than to risk rejection. Stoic philosophy exists for moments like this. The Stoics understood that a person rarely loses their dignity in one dramatic decision. It happens slowly, through small acts of self-betrayal, a boundary ignored, a value compromised, a moment where you knew you should walk away, but stayed. This video is not about ego or superiority. It's about self-respect. It's about rebuilding the inner foundation that makes you unshakable, calm, and difficult to manipulate. These 5 Stoic lessons are not motivational quotes. They are principles that, when practiced daily, change how people treat you, because they change how you treat yourself. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Your value is not negotiable. The Stoics believe that your worth is not something the world gives you. It is something you decide and then defend through action. Epictetus taught that the moment you allow others to determine your value, you surrender your freedom. And most people do this without realizing it. They accept poor treatment to avoid conflict. They lower standards to keep relationships. They remain in environments that drain them because leaving feels uncomfortable. But here is the Stoic truth. If your value can be negotiated, it will be discounted. Think about how people treat expensive things versus cheap ones. What is rare and protected is respected. What is constantly available and unguarded is taken for granted. The same applies to you. When you tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or disregard, you are silently communicating that your standards are flexible, not through words, but through behavior. A Stoic does not argue about worth. They demonstrate it by what they allow and what they refuse. Lowering yourself often feels like being understanding or patient. But Stoicism draws a clear line between patience and self-abandonment. Imagine a man who is constantly overlooked at work. He does more than asked. He stays late. He avoids confrontation, yet he is never promoted, never acknowledged. The Stoic lesson here is brutal but freeing. Effort without boundaries invites exploitation. Value is not proven by endurance. It is proven by standards. The moment you decide, this is how I expect to be treated, you must be willing to walk away when those expectations are violated. Not angrily, not dramatically, but firmly. Stoicism teaches that dignity is internal. No one can take it unless you hand it over. Lesson 3. Seeking validation makes you small. Seneca warned that dependence on others is a form of slavery. Nowhere is this more evident than in validation-seeking behavior. Most people don't openly ask for approval. They seek it indirectly. They over-explain their choices. They change opinions to avoid disagreement. They tolerate poor treatment to feel chosen. This is how people slowly erase themselves. Stoicism teaches that self-worth must be internally generated. If it depends on praise, attention, or acceptance, it will always be unstable. Imagine building a house on moving ground. That is what external validation does to identity. The Stoic builds importance through character, through discipline, through consistency. They ask themselves not, do they like me? But, am I acting in alignment with my values? This shift is life-changing. When you stop seeking validation, something uncomfortable happens first. You lose attention. People who benefited from your compliance may pull away. You may feel invisible. Stoicism teaches that this is not loss, it is purification. What remains after validation is removed is real. Real relationships, real respect, real self-trust. Think of someone who constantly posts for approval. They feel powerful when praised and empty when ignored. Their emotional state is controlled by response metrics. The Stoic is immune to this cycle. They understand that importance is built quietly through mastery, skill, discipline, integrity. When you stop performing for approval, people sense it, and paradoxically, respect often follows. Not because you demanded it, but because you no longer needed it. Lesson 4. Walk away without explaining. One of the hardest Stoic lessons is learning when to leave and how. Most people lower themselves at the end of relationships, jobs, or phases of life. They over-explain. They seek closure from those who caused the harm. They want to be understood. Stoicism teaches a harsh truth. You do not owe explanations to people who ignored your boundaries. Marcus Aurelius emphasized action over argument. A Stoic leaves quietly, with dignity intact. Imagine staying in a situation that consistently disrespects you. You finally decide to leave, but instead of walking away, you explain yourself for weeks. You debate. You justify. You reopen wounds. Each explanation weakens your position. A Stoic understands that explanations are invitations for negotiation, and some decisions should not be negotiated. Walking away without explaining is not cruelty. It is clarity. Those who respected you will understand without words. Those who didn't never intended to understand. Think of it like closing a door. You don't stand there justifying why you closed it. You close it because it needed to be closed. Stoicism teaches that endings should be clean. No bitterness, no revenge, no lingering attachment, just alignment with your values. When you walk away calmly and decisively, you preserve self-respect, and self-respect compounds. People may not like your silence, but they will feel its weight. Lesson 5. Become important by becoming unbreakable. The Stoics never chased importance. They focused on resilience. Epictetus said that no one is free unless they master themselves. This is the final lesson. You become important not by demanding attention, but by becoming stable, disciplined, and grounded. Unbreakable people are rare. They don't overreact. They don't chase. They don't collapse under pressure. They wake up and do the work. They train their minds. They control impulses. They keep promises to themselves, not for applause, but for alignment. This inner solidity changes how the world responds to you. When you stop lowering yourself, life becomes quieter, but stronger. You lose weak connections. You gain peace. You lose chaos. You gain clarity. Stoicism teaches that importance is a byproduct, not a pursuit. It emerges when you stop betraying yourself for comfort. The unbreakable person does not need to announce their worth. It is felt, and that is the Stoic path. Closing. Never lowering yourself does not mean thinking you are above others. It means refusing to abandon yourself. Stoicism is not about domination. It is about dignity. If you apply even one of these lessons consistently, your life will change. Not dramatically, but permanently. Because the world does not respect words. It respects standards. And standards begin with you.